Structurally, it is okay. I will say that heating is a huge issue in the school. Even though they came in and did some work over the summer and tried to put in some separate zoning, one of our big concerns is the heating. So for instance, we could be sweltering in the middle of winter in the office while a classroom is freezing in one part of the building. In another part of the building, it's 80 degrees. So it's very hard to regulate the temperature of this building, even though they have tried multiple times to try and regulate it so that it isn't quite as bad.
How cold does it get in the classroom?
We have a couple of classrooms where it goes down into the lower 60s. We have had to relocate some classrooms in the real cold days in the middle of winter. We'll move them and put them in the library because you have kids sitting in coats, and it's really hard to learn when your fingers are frigid cold and numb. And it's hard to teach because the kids are moving every 45 minutes, but the teacher's in there all day long. And you know, those kids who are in that freezing cold room in their coat then go off, you know, it's an English class, a couple English classrooms specifically, go off to a science classroom where there could be a 15 to 20 degree differential. And so that's not only uncomfortable to go from that cold to that warm, but it also isn't necessarily that healthy to go from freezing to sweating in the middle of winter. So that's one of the biggest issues that we have in the building is the heating. Another big issue, and I'm just thinking in terms of the office, but it's throughout the whole building, is our windows. And we can look at some of those as we go through the building. But most of our windows are really old, and several of them, if you put them up, they have to be propped up. Some of them, if they come up, will fall. Several of our windows have had to be screwed shut so that they don't fall in, literally fall in on the classroom. We've had that happen about once a year since I've been here, and that's been 3 years. So that has been a major concern of ours, is the windows as well. And that's throughout really the entire, we're in the A section of the or the B section of the building. The A section of the building is over on the side where the gym and the science rooms are. These are the two sections where we have the window issues. The C wing is a whole different story, and we'll look at the windows when we get down there. So
the heating system is a single heating system for the entire building?
No. They've switched it up though, haven't they? This is Donna, one of our custodians, who can answer some of these questions better than I can.
It's basically just one main, and it's like a steam, and then you get the forced hot air.
Okay.
So.
And we'll go down to the boiler room on the tour.
And
so
this is the main.
This is the main entrance. Right? Yep.
So yep. The only security you got is buzzing people in and out.
It is, exactly, and. You know, we've been fortunate this year to have a security system installed and to have most of our doors are functional. We still have a few doors that need some replacement. We actually, after the event in Newtown, took the handles off many of the doors from the outside, so you can still get out in an emergency situation, but people can't pull the doors open from the outside. Because several of our doors were a little bit rickety, and if you pulled really hard, you could get them open. So we've taken the handles out to secure the building much more, and we now have swipes on doors. So we've actually gotten rid of the need for keys, and now in order to get in the building, you need to have a swipe that is coded to allow you in.
Okay, and the record kept to that?
Yeah, through the network. So it's all computerized. And so any visitor to the building has to come in the main office, and we have a camera. And in the next phase of the security, we're actually getting an additional camera put outside so we can see the approach. Because right now you can't see anyone until they're right there at the door ringing the doorbell.
So is that why some of the doors were propped open? I actually came in down through the gym.
No, because it's basketball.
Yeah, for basketball.
They get locked out.
Yeah, so we secure the building during school hours, And then in the evening, because we have so many community events, they do have to prop the doors open.
Okay, so
Otherwise,
that's
one of our
not
custodians would have to stand there and let people in and out all night, and they have other duties to attend to. So
Are these front doors new?
they are not. None of our doors are new. We are supposed to be getting some new doors.
Because I knew that there was a big problem with the doors.
Yes. So like I said, they've fixed a few of them. We've taken the handles off of some, which has helped to solve the problem. We still have a few that need replacing.
And there are gaps?
And there are huge gaps in some
Yes.
of the doors
Okay.
to allow for heat to go
Yes.
out. And we actually have a fire door issue in the building. We have to keep all of our fire doors closed because the doors that are supposed to close on their own do not function anymore. So at the last town meeting, I believe they appropriated some monies so that we can actually have several of our fire doors replaced over the course of the summer. And they're going to be replacing some and using some doors that work to replace others, if that makes sense. So we'll be getting some new fire doors and I believe at least one outside door throughout the summer.
So what you've described so far would have to get fixed or addressed no matter who is going to occupy the building in the future.
Correct.
Do you have enough space here, more or less?
Well, it's an interesting question. It depends on how you look at it. We certainly have enough space for the students and the teachers who are in the building. We're probably a couple classrooms short from ideal. But a true middle school is grades 6, 7, and 8. And ideally, we would like to be a 6-8 school in order to have students age appropriately placed in the building and in terms of curriculum. And we definitely don't have the space to do that because we're probably at a max of capacity right now in terms of students and faculty in the building.
With just grade 7
With
and
just
8.
grades 7 and 8. Yeah. We have some teachers sharing classrooms. We have some teachers moving classrooms throughout the day because though we can make it work, we are short some classrooms to really give everybody the space that they need.
The classroom's the right size, like the science classroom is smaller than it needs to be to have the
So a majority of our classrooms are actually smaller than what the MSBA would deem as a appropriate classroom size. So it's difficult for teachers to teach in a 21st century way. For example, it's hard when you have 28 students in a classroom, in a small classroom, to be constantly moving kids around in groups and things because it's very tight. So in order for teachers to really teach the way we want them to be teaching, we need to provide them with a greater space in order to do that. So it does get tight, and especially in the classrooms where we have people sharing. That's tight as well. We've turned just about every closet we have into either a small classroom or an office. So we have repurposed as many spaces as we can. But ideally, you know, our school psychologist, who also houses a trampoline and a cozy corner for students who need those movement breaks or that sensory diet, she's in an old copy room and everything's squished in, which is not ideal for students who are already having emotional and sensory concerns. So those are some of our space issues. So our building has 15 different level changes, and it makes it really difficult for anyone with accessibility issues to get around the building. So whether it's a school or any other use for the building, it's going to be difficult without addressing the accessibility issues. We do have one elevator, but this elevator only goes from the first floor to the third floor of the B wing. It does not go anywhere else in the building. In order to get from this level into the A wing, students or parents have to use a lift, and that will get them to the different levels of the A wing and down into the basement as well of the B wing. But in order to get to the C wing, it becomes a greater issue. Students can travel on the lift all the way down from that end of the building down into the B wing, but they can't because there's another level change on the bottom floor. They cannot get up and go all the way into the cafeteria. Students can come back up to here, go down from the elevator to get to the cafeteria, and from the C wing, there's another chairlift to bring them down into the cafeteria. But for a student to go from directly from the B wing into the C wing, there really is no easy way to do it. It has, you know, if they're in the A wing, they have to take that chairlift, come down here, go into the elevator, go up another chairlift, and by that point they've missed at least 10 minutes of class on either end. Or they can go outside and around, which is not ideal given our weather in the area, especially in the winter. We have had, this year we had a student who was in a wheelchair for several months, and it was really difficult for her. The last 2 years prior to that, we had a student who was we had 2 different students in wheelchairs at different times, and it's very difficult. If there's ever an emergency, we actually would have to carry them down from the 3rd floor and out of the building. And you can imagine that for a 12, 13, 14-year-old student, not only is it inconvenient, not only are they missing class, but it's really embarrassing and humiliating, because if they are on a chairlift, everybody who's passing needs to stop and allow the chairlift to move. And so you have these, you know, throngs of middle school kids watching one student go up and down the stairs. It's also difficult for parents. All of our assemblies, our graduations, our concerts, our National Junior Honor Society, our sporting events are in the gym, and we do have parents who are wheelchair bound, and in order for them to get up to those events, they have to come through the front. We have to get a custodian, they have to go up, and we have had instances where the chairlift has stalled while they're trying to get up or down, and that's just, it's inconvenient, it's embarrassing, and it's just not something that someone in this day and age who has an accessibility issue should have to endure. So,
Anybody know if the architects who are looking at this building for other purposes are talking about changing the handicap accessibility, or because you're going to have a lot of, you know, elderly, either through the town departments or through the Council of Aging, wandering through this building. Probably have more disabled individuals than you have now, and if that can't be addressed because of structural issues, I'd like to know that beforehand.
I think I can answer that. It's my understanding that that's one of the issues the architects look at, but it's also a requirement of the state accessibility regulations based on the amount of work the building's going to need, that it be made fully accessible. And if you can't do certain things, you know, due to the limitations of the physical plant, you know, there's a variance process. But based on the route that Sarah just described for a kid to get from one end of the school to the other, something like that would not be accepted by the state variance board for accessibility, and so it would be dealt with. Most assuredly, and it's also an obligation under the ADA Title II.
Any reuse would be ADA compliant.
Absolutely, it would have to be.
so regardless of whether it was a school or a town building, if it gets a rehab, it's going to need to have that addressed.
okay, continue on.
I don't think they are.
These are 12 by 12, so they're probably
What was the question?
asbestos.
There are some in the building, but not all of them, because the building is so old. We do have some asbestos in the building. They came in and did a thorough, it was a company that came in and gave us a report on the asbestos, and everything is covered, but there is asbestos in the building.
You would
So,
expect that.
yeah, it's an old building.
And what facility do you have for emergency powers?
We have a generator.
Okay. You basically take care of your elevators and
I don't think in that, it wouldn't work the elevator, it just works emergency lighting.
just emergency
That's it.
lighting access only?
That's it.
Egress.
Yep.
Okay.
So if someone's in the elevator and the power went out,
They would be stuck.
Oh.
Part of the renovation would include powering. Well, that's too small anyway. You can tell from looking at it.
What?
they open.
Looks too small anyway.
Yeah.
Get replaced, and it would have to get on standby generator for egress.
Okay. So this is our library media center. It's also our teacher-faculty room, and on the other side of the book stacks is a computer lab. This actually is a classroom, so you had asked about space. We actually had to build a classroom over last summer, and that is a learning center classroom, so it's smaller than most, which is okay because there aren't as many kids, but even for that small learning center, that's a small classroom, but that was as big as we could get with the space that we had. So this is all part of the original building. Originally, though, this was 2 floors, and this was not two, yeah, it was like a single, it was an auditorium. Okay. And I don't know when it was converted. Donna, do you know?
When we moved to town in 1974, this building had just been renovated and renamed after Lester Gates.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how much was done in 1974,
Yeah.
but or prior to that.
That sounds like it could have
but
been,
maybe at that time.
yeah.
And I understand that one happened because there was flooding, like some pipes burst, and I mean, they had to.
They had to renovate.
Choice.
So yeah, so this was the auditorium.
But they
Back in the day.
replace windows or anything at that, with that renovation?
No.
Because these are original windows then to the building?
Some of them have been replaced. They're just still quite old.
Yeah.
And not functional. Yeah,
That's right.
exactly. Okay. So this is the Sea Wing breezeway, and this is where some of our doors let in the most air. The one behind you, you can see the sunlight coming in. As you go down the doors, you can see it starting to come in, and they continuously try and finagle the doors to make them tighter throughout the year. But through use, they start to shift a little bit. And this is one of the chair lifts that I was referencing earlier that would bring people down from the Sea Wing into the cafeteria, or from the cafeteria up into the Sea Wing. And the Sea Wing we're about to go into, this is the part of the building that was built as a temporary structure about 50 years ago. That is still standing. Last summer, 2 summers ago, I guess I've lost track, they did sort of scrape and repaint all the wood along the bottoms, and have done a little resealing of the windows because it is, the sealant is cracking a little bit. But we can walk down there and you can see what those windows are like.
So because it was temporary, it meant that there was no foundation?
Correct.
So there's bigger issues you could see kind of from out here.
Yeah,
because
there's been rotting. We actually replaced all of this wall. Like I said, it was either a year or 2 years ago, I can't remember. And this was so rotted that they were able to literally just sort of kick it down when they came in to do it. And the windowsills have been replaced. This is new as well. And our tile is starting to crack a little bit, but that's throughout the whole building. So this is the Sea Wing, as we call it. And I think if we actually go into a classroom, you'll see they're good size. It's just sort of old and run down. Our lockers, which I know for a different use for this building wouldn't necessarily be necessary, but if we were to remain in this building, then we would need new lockers because a lot of them are broken or warped or just aren't functional anymore at this time. So, we talk about trying to update the building in terms of education. And one of the difficulties we have here is updating it in terms of technology. If you look, I don't know if you can turn it, if you look at the projector even and what had to be put in order to hang a projector, it isn't easy in a lot of our classrooms because of the ceilings and because most of our rooms only have 1 or 2 electrical outlets. So we don't have enough power, and this would probably be the same no matter what the use of this building is that most of the classrooms don't have the electrical power to keep up with the electrical needs of today. In terms of technology, most of our classrooms have multiple power strips with lots of things plugged into them in order to make a classroom work. And, you know, I mentioned the windows earlier, and you can just sort of see that a lot of them are starting, you know, some of them don't work anymore. They're all starting to rot and rust. And a lot of the sealant is, I mean, there's only a tiny little bit left on a majority of the windows in this wing. We have a robotics classroom that is, I mean, it's the only classroom we had to put that class in, and it is not an appropriate classroom for a robotics science lab. They're building robots, running them around, and they're in a classroom this size on a carpet, and we had to have the entire room, the whole electrical redone in order to make that classroom functional. So that's not an appropriate use of space.
He said, the teacher told me they come out to the hallway.
They do.
To use it. So I imagine then what happens to the other classrooms when all these robots and kids are in the hallway.
Exactly. It becomes a bit of a distraction. So, okay. And so this is our cafeteria. It's fine. Sometimes it does get a little crowded in here because it is a small cafeteria for the size of lunch that we have. Some of our bigger issues in here over the past few years have been the leaks in the ceiling. We have had leaks come through either, sometimes have dances down here, so during dances or during lunch. And we've had to have the heating folks in to fix things and the plumbing folks in to fix things while kids are here in school in session because of the leaks into the cafeteria. You know, the windows are not as functional as they could be down here, so it does get warm in here during the summer or when we come back in the fall, because they don't all open and none of them stay open. They all have to be propped open. Okay.
Sarah, I understand that you have to use styrofoam trays and because the cleaning system or something broke years ago.
So, and there's a back little room here, and the big washing machine that you would use for trays isn't functional anymore, and so we use styrofoam trays at this point as a result.
A big cost.
It is a cost, and it's environmentally not as sound as it could be.
Not when they're learning to be green.
Right, and we're trying to encourage recycling, and on Fridays we have composting that goes out to our gardens, so, and they're doing all of that off of styrofoam trays. Exactly.
And what's the fire egress? You know, if there was a fire in a kitchen,
Yeah.
how would the children or anyone get out?
They can go out here, or we actually have a stairwell in the back that goes directly out. So we actually have 3 exits if there was ever an emergency down here.
To make the lift work for a child.
Yes, we would have to.
Go out the back door here.
Yeah, you can go out the, you know, if it was in the kitchen, you couldn't. And we would have to lift them, carry them. But if it was somewhere else, there's a ramp out where they bring in all the deliveries. So, okay. So every student walks through this hallway on their way to lunch, actually. We call it the pipe hallway. Not only do they walk through here on the way to lunch, but this door is actually the door to our school psychologist's office, and we'll go through those doors, and we actually have 2 classrooms down here. So we do have to make use of the space down on this level beyond just the cafeteria. The kitchen, to get into the kitchen, you would go through here, and then our boiler room is right down the hall.
Sitting in here. Sorry, you might have a better answer. I was just asked, what's your top reason to not renovate this as a school?
Well, we can't, it's,
I just said 6, 7, 8, but
yeah, and just educationally, it's, who asked? Who asked the question?
red and black jacket from the Council on Aging.
From what?
The Council on Aging versus when they designed this school 100 years ago. The way they taught 100 years ago is not the way they teach now.
It was very content specific and driven by almost like silos, an English department, a math department, and now everything we try and teach is integrated and interdisciplinary. And when you have all the science on this end and all the language on that end of the building, and it's very hard to merge those disciplines together and create interdisciplinary project-based learning units. It's also really hard to just, middle school philosophy is you're based in a team. And every team, your English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language should all be in one area where they can have a common meeting space and create those smaller communities within a larger community. And in this building, we can barely even get teams together, never mind create those smaller community pods.
Does that mean that students are essentially staying in one area?
In an ideal world, it would be, not in this building. And we cannot get to a point where all teachers have the space to really move around and do collaborative grouping and cooperative work and project-based learning because they just don't have the space within their classroom to do that. In an ideal world, as I said at the very beginning, we would have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade here together because you want to have 6th grade learning in it's really part of the middle school curriculum. And when they're at the elementary level, it's very difficult to control what's going on when they're not in your building in terms of what curriculum is being taught in order to ready them for 7th grade. There are workarounds, but no matter how you slice it, you're dealing with 4 different schools and trying to make things all.
How standard is 6th, 7th, 8th? The reason I ask is when I went to school, I did a 7, 8, 9. I've heard of 7, 8s, I've heard of 6, 7s,
I would say the majority of your middle schools are 6, 7, 8. You'll also find 5 through 8s. If you have a 5 through 8, you're really running almost two separate schools within a school. And then on a whole different philosophy, you have the K-8s. But I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a 7, 8, 9 in many places anymore. You might find a 7 through 12, but a 7, 8, 9 is not typical.
This was 6, 7, 8.
Yeah. Only
Until
a few
the
years ago.
population grew, so
It was
they
too
couldn't
big,
do it.
it didn't fit, so that's when they built Jenkins.
Right.
And that's when they moved all the 6th graders out into the elementary
Because
schools.
when my kids were here, it was 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, it's really hard to create a community when you're transitioning in and the very next year you're transitioning out. You don't ever feel like you belong to the school. You're always either coming in or going out, and there's no sense of belonging or ownership or responsibility to this building. It's almost as just I like to think we've done a better job than this, but it's almost like you just have to you're just getting through in order to get to the next phase, which is not what a middle school should be, because middle school is some of the most difficult years that kids go through. And if you want to create a really safe and secure environment for them, then they have to feel settled where they are. And when they're coming in and going out within 2 years, it's almost impossible. I mean, it's really hard to do that. We're trying our best, but it's hard. So this is the boiler room.
It's cold in here. It's very cold, yeah. Just expected hot.
And I will not pretend to know much about the boiler system. I apologize for that.
Hey, Jen,
Oh, sorry.
I don't know, Jen, if you actually know more than I do.
I know a little bit, remember, because my father-in-law actually works for Burnham,
Yeah.
the company that makes these boilers, so I kind of paid attention to that part when I was learning about it.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that they're not that old, maybe 15 years old, so not in a horrible. 23 years old? Okay, so 15 was a little bit of a underestimate. And, but the statistics kind of stick in my head, and one of the things I remember hearing was that it costs 4 times more to heat this building than it does any of the other schools.
Yes.
So it's the equivalent of about $1,000 a day in the winter to $1,000 of our taxpayer money wasted out the windows and the door cracks, and that's with a 23-year-old system. So you can imagine how much worse it
Sometimes
is.
in the cold, I mean, you know, the really cold, we've got all 3 of them going.
Now, we're going to try to switch over to gas.
Yes,
you're
I
talking to
believe they are going to do some more work with the ESCO updates,
Which will help somewhat.
which should
And
help.
they tried to zone it a little bit?
They did some zoning over the past summer, and it has helped a little bit. It has helped a little.
Right, not just going right out the window. And when you think of how like spread out the building is, it's, you know, a core section.
Yeah, the steam must be cold by the time it gets to the A-wing.
Yeah.
And then the registers are all.
You know, the pipe hallway continues down here, and we actually have classrooms down here and student lockers. So we have students in this part of the hallway all day long. You know, they're really in the basement of the building. It's not ideal conditions for learning. So, and again, just sort of the state of our lockers.
There's many
There.
wonderful anecdotes about these lower classrooms when the windows are open and animals and things come in the windows.
Because the windows are actually at ground level. So any, you know, if they're open, people, animals, anything could easily,
Trash.
because none of our windows have screens. I don't know that there's a single,
You don't open these windows?
no, we're talking about in the classrooms themselves.
Yes, when it gets to be around 85, you need to get some air in
Yeah.
there, you know?
You had a room down
That
here
was
at
my
one
room
point,
for many
right?
years, right down there.
And that's been one of the typically coldest rooms in the building.
I never really noticed cold too much. I
Yeah.
like it cold.
Janine isn't a fan.
But the pipes that are now being
Yeah.
covered up by by some kind of construction.
And in the past, they've actually had pipes burst into that classroom. Do you want to get in there?
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Well, actually, soon after they renovated this place back in the early 70s, there was a horrible roof cave-in during a major rainstorm. The school committee was actually being held up in the media center, and all the alarms started going off. And this whole section of the building, the roof collapsed, broke all sorts of water pipes and everything, and this whole section was flooded. And it was like 3 days left before the end of school.
And that was after the renovation?
That was after the renovation, yeah. So this section actually had to have a second sort of redo soon after that. I don't know how many years it was after the renovation, maybe 3 or 4. Yep. We had to have 8th grade graduation at the high school.
This is the fallout shelter.
That?
Yep. Which is where also some of our, is,
So you say it's a fallout shelter, what's in there?
so, Donna, can you just open this and people can,
Just look down.
yeah.
Back when we were gonna get new.
And which system is in here? Electrical?
Yeah, that's
So this
the
is,
main power.
this is the main
grid.
power grid is in here as well. And they have fixed part of the problem, but it used to flood, which was always a dangerous situation because you have all the power coming in.
Wasn't
And,
that, used to be the old bomb shelter?
It is.
Yeah.
Back in the 60s.
Back when the Russians were.
So you probably just want to take a peek.
Oh, Lord.
Flies
Have you ever
down
read that
there.
story, Casper and Amontillado, you know, Edgar Allan Poe?
Cases of spam.
No, but there was an old toilet paper down.
goodness.
Let's get down there.
Be careful.
Nobody wanted to venture?
Don't get too close to the edge.
Are there stairs?
There's a ladder. Oh, he's going down.
Oh my gosh.
Will
I'm not
you
going
take
down.
video? Do you have
Should
a
we
phone?
send you the camera?
No, no, I'll go down with it. Why not?
I'm not
I'll give you
going
my
down.
phone.
They're all going.
I'm okay staying up.
Now, when the MSBA came around, did they go down there? Do you remember?
They did, yeah. They usually go everywhere.
How many classrooms
Yeah,
could you
have we
fit down
heard
there?
any?
Yeah, right. If we thought that was the basement, right?
This is the non-fictional part of the library.
So this is what Oklahoma needs.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do. I
Should be
know.
mandatory in every
Oh,
school.
should absolutely.
Every public building, how do they not have it?
Out there, you would
Yeah.
think, I know.
Terrible.
So have you heard anything about being on the June 5th agenda?
Just that we're still hoping, I don't know
He
the
was
actual
very,
agenda.
I haven't talked to him, though.
Yeah, he felt very hopeful, but the agenda hasn't actually been published yet as of Friday.
Who
It
is he?
hadn't, John McCarthy.
Okay.
I asked if they heard anything
Yeah.
about being posted on the June 5th agenda, because that's,
And the little paperwork we got from them actually talks about June 5th. And so when John, I guess, called, the guy kept saying, well, don't read anything into that, don't read anything into that. But, you know, it says June 5th all over the place, you know what I mean? So hopefully it is June 5th. It's not one of these bait and switch
Yeah,
things, you know?
but we're just waiting for them to officially post an agenda to know.
Because they really stressed the point about how this whole thing.
You'll be sorry you wore white.
It's a sandy beach down there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is.
like literally sand on the floor. or
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
sand.
there's sand on the
It's- it's-
Well,
it's
dirt,
less-
like dirt,
dirt
yeah.
floor, yeah, it's just.
That's the tin.
Pretty cool.
Are we missing anybody?
I know, don't lock it up unless we do our count.
a rescue
How
crew down.
often do you need to access that?
To go down?
Yes.
Well, just when they work on the building,
Yeah.
because the main power grids, or whatever you want to call them, are down.
But you don't go down there on
Oh,
a
no, no,
regular
no,
basis?
no.
There's a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
Ceiling down there.
This is the locker room, and our girls do use it, and we have a boys' locker room as well. And they do change, but as you walk through, and I would definitely encourage you to take the camera through, you'll see that it's just really run down, old. It is not a desirable space. It is also absolutely not handicapped accessible. If someone was in a wheelchair, they cannot access the changing stalls, they cannot access the bathroom in here. And in order to use a bathroom, if you were in a wheelchair, a student would have to go to their nurse's office or down the hall to the science classrooms to use the restroom, or come back here and try and change. There's really no private spot that someone in a wheelchair could use even to change in here.
Nobody showers.
Nobody showers. The showers aren't even functional at this point. And even if they were, it wouldn't be something that you wanted to use. So
Does gym like kind of in the middle of the day? Is it
it's all day long.
all day long? So it depends.
Gym runs all day long.
Okay.
Yep. So, all right. It's our fitness center. This is actually one of our better spots in the building. Where not only are we fortunate to have it, but it's actually it's a nice space and it gets used often.
How is it used?
So our phys ed classes actually come down and utilize it. Sometimes they use it actually to teach whole class lessons, and other times they use it as a fitness center. The kids are doing group exercises, or they're learning, they did whole muscle units this year, and they had to learn what specific exercises they should do in order to strengthen a specific muscle. And then we have fitness center use after school, 2 days a week as well. And the kids can sign up and come down and get their exercise. So this is a great space. This is a result of the PEP grant. So we were really fortunate to get this space. And next door is our engineering lab. which also is a nice space. This all was our old shop area that has been transformed. We do have nice areas for the building too. Everybody always talks about the negative, but we have a few nice areas. And we have great people, which make up for the building.
Great teachers.
Great students.
Great teacher can teach almost anything.
Yes. But what was interesting is a couple years ago, we actually did a core values assessment, and we asked students about their learning experiences, and I forget exactly the number, but it was about, I want to say it was 60-something percent, 67% of the students actually commented on the physical building as a hindrance to their learning. And so you think that kids don't pick up on those things, but they absolutely did, and it was completely unprompted. Actually, I was surprised by it. I thought they would mention a lot of other things first, but that was one of their top vote getters. And it was, you know, it was just 1, 2, and 3, so they actually wrote those in. So, but this is a nice space, our engineering lab.
This used to be the old metal shop, and that used to be the old wood shop.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll head back up. So I was just saying, this is an example of a fire door that really is non-functional.
Look at the cracks.
It doesn't open, it doesn't close, you have to push it.
What percentage of the water fountains are operational?
Not a lot of them.
Probably maybe 5 in the whole school work.
Wow.
Yeah, and the kids, even the ones
They
that
have water
work, they
bottles.
don't often drink out of them. They'll bring their own. Do you want to see the attic space?
It's another straight up. If you want to.
I've been in the basement.
Did the attic space over the computer area, did that?
That's not attic space.
Oh,
That's,
okay, sorry,
yeah, so we'll get up there. We'll talk about the flooding up there.
Is that how you have to get to the Coca-Cola up that way? Or can you get it?
There's another entrance down on the.
So how is that used up there?
Storage. But it's all wood. There's no sprinklers up there either. So if there was ever a fire,
It's like a tinder box.
yeah, sprinklers in general are an issue here. So no matter what the purpose of this building is, that will also need to be updated. I mean, no matter what, there's a lot of updating that needs to happen, no matter who inhabits the building.
Right.
So,
Obviously, price it out, see whether you
exactly.
knock it down.
This is a science classroom, and as you can see, I mean, they're doing labs. Oh, should I wait for that to turn on?
No, it's on.
Okay. And as they're doing labs, it's pretty squishy in here. It's hard to really, for the science teachers to do labs in the way that they would like to do them with the limited space that they have. And just, you know, building-wise, some of the, you know, this is a room where you're starting to see some cracks.
Sarah,
Yes.
I haven't seen any of the data, maybe you could speak to this too, but we've crested in terms of population, right? What's the size, I mean, you mentioned that we are too big a population to handle kind of what we have comfortably, and certainly too big to add 6th grade, but do you have a sense of, you know, how big or how small?
Well, we were looking
It is
at
gonna
the
go
6th,
down.
7th, and 8th is what we were looking at. The MSBA actually did their own population study for us because that was part of the process. And they did it for 7th and 8th because they had to do it for exactly what we have, but then they also did it for 6th, 7th, and 8th. And they predicted that if we have 6th, 7th, and 8th here, we're going to have somewhere in the vicinity of about 700 and, was it 50?
Yeah, it's going to go down. The next 10 years, the projections are actually going down. And they only project really 10 or so years out based on birth rates.
And I think we talked about it at the last meeting. You know, I was a little worried about that because, you know, thinking here what happened to us with Jenkins, we built a school and it was already overcrowded the day it opened its doors, you know, so that's what got me worried here. But supposedly, MSBA does not want to pay for empty space, basically. So they're very strict with their population studies.
And a lot of the buildings that they're building are actually designed so that you can more easily add on to them, so that they're very scalable. And, you know, you can either add like a pod or you can go up a level. That's how they're building, because they know that, you know, the population is dropping, and that in 15 years, if it goes up, you're likely going to have to go back to them for an addition. But they know that the building that they're going to approve is going to be able to house that and accept that, and they'll do all the systems work so that it can take on an addition if need be. So that's how they're functioning right now with the MSBA. This is obviously the gym.
Another story about this floor, about 5 years ago, was refinished. The people who were refinishing it discovered that the wood here, anybody here who's built, they probably, I think it's called tiger oak or something like that. Isn't there some kind of an oak like that, some name? Is that what it was called?
Yep, you got maple.
And tiger maple, something, which is supposedly like the most incredible wood that you can possibly have. Of course, it was all covered with shellac and everything, so when they had stripped it down, they could not believe what they had here. They could not believe what they had here.
This is actually not bad.
No.
Paint, but it's not bad.
Yeah, no.
So in the projection, if this end is the senior center, would this gym stay here, or would it be
In the pictures it's here, right?
that it would stay a
I
gymnasium?
think it was part of the community center.
Or the record.
Correct.
They could very easily be.
But you could almost see in the daytime, the senior citizens could have their yoga classes.
Absolutely,
in
they
here,
could,
things
yes.
like that.
Yeah.
And then the rec would come in the afternoon and take over.
Which is sort of what happens anyway. In the evening and on the weekends.
Boys, men's basketball is here
Yeah.
all the time.
And rec's here all weekend. So,
Should probably have sprinklers for the whole town's use of it, you know?
Yes.
Would be good if there were sprinklers here.
yeah.
Are there any functional issues with this space?
No, we really don't have any functional issues in here. I would tell you that at some point, no matter who inhabits the building, whether it's us or somebody else, the emergency exit stairwells should be redone. They're metal, and some of them are rotting out. There is actually holes in them. So that would be something that would need to be updated no matter who was in this building. But the gym itself, I would add sprinklers maybe, but
The locker rooms are
the locker room's on the floor below, and there is no easy way to get up here if you have a handicap.
Those are the access.
So, again, accessibility issues.
And this is used for a lot more things than the gym, like the,
It's the only place we can put the whole school. So it's our assembly space as well.
that's when really the parents coming in
Yep.
with their accessibility issues,
Yep,
and they can't get in there.
right.
So how would a handicapped person get here?
They come in the front door, and then we bring them up the lift. And then they come around down the ramps and into here.
That's that medieval torturing device that
Yes.
goes up the stairs.
Is it true that broke down with the beeping going off, that lift over there recently when?
We've had some, there are times when we need to use it where we have to call in the company to come in and fix it, because we have people that need to use it. It does, I'd say they come in, Donna, 5 or 6 times a year to address issues with the lift.
Some of that regular maintenance, or just always an issue?
Some of it's, and some of it's an issue.
How do
Yeah.
you get out of here fast?
Yeah. You have to have a key so that just not anybody can come and pull them open. So, okay. So this is the 3rd floor of the B wing. And so we'll go down here. One of our biggest issues up here, well, we need some new carpeting. You can see that it's all sort of you know, it's now tacked down with tape. But one of our really big issues up here is leaks. And so we'll go through and you'll be able to see all the areas where we've had leaks. Every year new leaks spring up. And last year they actually got up on the roof and they tried to really seal them all with, they went down and bought a bunch of caulking and just sealed as much of the seams up there as they could. And then this year in one of the storms, and I can't remember which one, a piece of the air conditioning unit or one of the vents came loose and rolled across the roof, which popped holes in it and created a whole new set of leaks. So we have had, over the course of the years, even just the 3 short years I've been here, our fair share of leaks up here, which dramatically impacts anything going on up here, whether we're in here and it's learning or, you know, if someone's working. We've had leaks in on desks and computers and over electrical outlets. So, Donna, can you open Ruth? I know Ruth has had some leaks recently. I will say sometimes it's hard because Jojo, our custodian, goes in and replaces the ceiling tiles as best he can. So sometimes, yeah. Oh yeah, no.
Here, yeah.
So you can see all the spots. She had a lot of leaks this year.
And this is a good example of the windows here, how they leak, right through here.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just,
One thing about
you gotta be very
she has
careful.
the best
Facilities like this.
The only building I've ever been in that is as old or in similar condition was the building in Rockland, their middle school. And that actually, they're in the middle, it's the end of a building project as well. This is the oldest building, school building I've ever been in. So here's, we had quite a leak in here this winter. And, well, and then this actually has been replaced, but this was a leak and we had to move a projector because of it.
Scituate's got a huge problem.
Yeah. And in this computer lab, we actually, had to, this whole side came down due to water damage, and we had to submit an insurance claim because there were computers that lined this wall, and it just ruined everything that was in here. So.
Sarah, do you have pictures of all of the damage?
We do.
Okay.
Yep. Our assistant principal took pictures and has them.
When did that happen?
Was after one of the winter storms.
This
and
year?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
And I can't remember which of the
I
storms.
didn't know if you were talking.
I think it was the
years
second
ago,
storm.
or-
I think it was the second snow.
Probably
Yeah,
safe
no.
to say February.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't realize you were talking about this year.
Yeah, this year.
Yes.
Yep. This has been interesting. Next door here is a social studies classroom. And
You go through here to get there?
no, there is a hallway.
Oh, okay.
But you can see things are a little out of alignment here. She has had a couple times where, due to one thing or another, you know, someone pulls the door too hard and the ceiling, this part of the ceiling is barely over that wall, so she has had times where it started to come down on her just because it's not secure up there. So the ceiling tiles start to come down because it's really not in there very well.
Ceiling doesn't go up to
Yeah. So as you shut the door, don't shut it too hard. Because that's what happens. Because it shakes in it.
Oh, you want me to shut the door?
Yeah, I was just, you missed the beginning. And so we'll go back out that way and, do you want to see more leaks? So we have lots of leaking here and in these two
This
classrooms.
is B wing.
Yeah, this is B. So,
A doesn't usually get leaks, does it?
no, B wing.
This is middle section.
Yeah.
Which is
This is the original.
This is the-
Yeah, and all
And this is the
along
one
this
that had that
hallway.
Roof collapse that time.
Yeah.
Right down the end there.
And these two classrooms have had leaks as well, so. And we can head back down and head back to the office, and you've seen the whole building.